We're doing it.
All right, guys, let's try this again.
It's all right. Yeah.
Technical difficulties. So we'll
You
get
guys are
going.
awesome. Thank you for being patient. We appreciate it.
So I'm gonna get this pulled up here, and as we get people going, we will get started. I'll give it like about 1 minute just to make sure we get as many people in as possible, and then we'll just get this thing started here. So as you guys come in, feel free to drop, say what's up, and then we'll get going here in just a second. What's up, Chubbs Peterson? That's not your real name, but I know your real name. We got
You know the person?
Art. Yeah, I know. I know old Chubbs. Got from Poland, Logical Volume. Matthew Cuba. What's up, brother?
What time is it in Poland?
It's probably getting. I'd probably say 7, 8, maybe. I think we're like 6 hours time difference from
Really?
like the UK. So they're a little bit further east. So 7 p.m. Yeah. So boom.
7 p.m.
Yeah, 7 p.m.
So you're on the dot, dude.
I was close.
Wow.
Cobb the Troll. Thanks for letting me monitor the class yesterday. Cobb. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Somebody sneaking in and
Were you
watching.
were you at one of my classes yesterday? I don't know. But letting everybody get in here. What's up, PK Boxing and MMA? Cobb the Troll. Please don't be a troll. Oh, kids class. Cool. Yeah.
Nice.
Absolutely. It's Kobe. He said he cobbed the troll. Okay. I got you. You did a good job yesterday, man. I'm proud of you, especially how far you've come. So he's one of the kids. Remember, he'd come in and he'd be all kind of like doing this stuff, like, just not like he would just be stubborn about stuff. And like now, like yesterday, he was like helping coach some of like the younger kids. Now
Really?
he did a good job. It was awesome. Which kind of goes into what we're talking about today.
It's pretty cool.
So, what we're talking about today, guys, is mentors. And the reason this came up was recently I got a message from a guy who on Instagram who has cerebral palsy, and he's legally blind, and he's still doing jiu-jitsu. And I thought that was neat because obviously his jiu-jitsu is not going to look like mine. It's not going to look like Eugene's. It's not going to look like a lot of you guys because he has some very unique difficulties. But he's still out there training. He's out there doing what he can do. And he sent a video it was a video on his Instagram that I took and shared it with you on my Instagram because I was like, dude, this is so cool. And I thought it was important because it's interesting because so many people allow their unique experience to be robbed by the fact that it doesn't look like someone else's. Because what happens is like someone will look at like some really high level competitor and they're like, oh man, look at what he's doing, whatever. And then they look at their ability to compete and it's maybe not at the same position. And they're like, man,
Yeah.
I'm not that good. And they feel bad about it. They feel bad that they're not as good as that person. And then, or they feel bad because it doesn't look like that person's
Right.
experience, And it reminded me of some words that kind of came from one of my old mentors, Jim. Jim is Jim. Jim owned a GYM, a gym. And it was an old weightlifting gym. It was an old gym in a basement in Louisville, and it was where I, used to lift weights a bunch when I was younger. I had met Jim when I was waiting tables back in the day, and for some reason, he took a liking to me, gave me a free membership for a bit. I eventually paid for membership for a little bit, though. When I was younger, he just gave me a free membership, and I'd go in there and work out. And on Fridays, I remember he would always, we would always like have like a bench press night, and it was like me, him, and about 5 to 10 other guys, and lift some weights together, and we would do that sort of thing. And I remember it was funny because whenever we all got there and we're like, all right, we're gonna start getting warmed up and everything, Jim would begin his routine, which would start with slathering his like whole upper body in icy hot, and then he would be wrapping up his elbows, and doing all this stuff. Then he had a cigar he would chomp on, like he just would have a cigar in his mouth. It wasn't lit. It was just like he'd have it there.
awesome.
It was just weird. He just like he had these little like things that he would have that he would do, and then he would start his little warm up. He'd start like doing some light benching and moving around and stuff. And at this point he was still strong. At this point he's in his mid-60s.
Wow.
And he's he could still bench press 315 pretty consistently, and he could do a behind the neck press seated with about 255. Around like 65, 66 years old. So
It's pretty badass.
Not bad at all, And but he was weak compared to what he used to be because back in the day, like he was like powerlifting, Olympic. He did Olympic lifting in his younger days, and he did powerlifting, and he did bodybuilding, and he'd won some competitions and stuff like that. I think he was Mr. Kentucky at one point. He also was big. He did some strongman type stuff. I remember like there was a charity event for the Boys Haven that he did where like they were just doing these different things to raise money, and he like took this 500-pound fridge and strapped it to his back, and he was like walking like a certain distance with it, just like doing these weird things. But he's a really strong dude, and in his day he could bench press well into fours, and so for him to be stuck at 300, 315, he's like, it wasn't his best. But I remember though he would always say something because we'd all mess around with each other and stuff. But he would always say something to the effect of, like, he would call me Nicky. Is what he called me, Nicky. He's like, sometimes you just got to do what you can do. He's like, it ain't gonna look like what you used to do, but you just do what you can do, and that's what you do, And sometimes he'd come in there and he called it arm waving, like just curls and stuff like that. He's like, sometimes I'll just come in there and do some arm waving. He's like, I can't squat heavy anymore, so I just do the hack squat a little bit, and all these different things. And as I've gotten older, those words begin to sort of echo louder and louder to me because it's like, I'm getting what he's talking about. Because as my body gets older and it ages, my training doesn't look like it did when I was 20.
Yeah.
It's better, honestly. But, at the same time, I'm not able to push myself at the same amount of volume that I used to when I was younger. Because when I was younger, I could just train, crazy hard all the time. And there was never any worry of an injury. There was never any worry about maybe overdoing it. It was just like, I'll be fine in the morning. And as I've gotten older, I've had to adjust that. Or sometimes if I get an injury, I have to adjust the way I'm training. Sometimes if something happens, you have to adjust it. Even if sometimes I get busy with the business stuff, you have to adjust your training.
Right.
And that's okay. And all of us are going to get to that point where as we get older and older and older, our training is going to have to adjust. Now, some people will quit for sure, but there's some of us that are crazy like me, and I'm not going to quit. I'm just going to adjust it. I'm sure some of the people thought Jim was crazy because he's like this guy in his mid-60s still wanting to bench press and do heavy weight. And, he'd probably tell you that he's a little crazy, but he's like, whatever, that's who I am. And so, one of those things where you don't have to give things up, you just have to adjust it. And, I've gained a lot of lessons from mentors on and off the mat, and it was funny because I sent that email out yesterday. I talked to you about it. We said that we were going to talk a little bit about mentors. And sure enough, at the end of the night last night, I'm getting ready to close up the gym. I'm literally walking. I'm getting ready to turn the knob to lock the door, and I see a truck pull up to the gym, and I'm like, crap. And I figured it was someone real late who wanted to get some information in the gym, and I'm like, I got stuff to do. It's the end of the night. I'm tired. And it was one of my mentors, Al. And Al was a guy I met when I was 18 years old. I was in our old, it wasn't really a gym. We were in a weightlifting gym where we would basically pull puzzle mats out and we would put them together. And that's where our training facility was. And Al was a guy who, he did jiu-jitsu with us, and he saw me one day reading a book that got recommended to me by, strangely enough, a guy that I met on an internet forum who did jiu-jitsu out in LA, who was a banker. And it was
the way it used to be back in the day when it wasn't jiu-jitsu everywhere.
Exactly, right? And so he did this book about investing money that he had recommended to me. And so I'm reading this book, and so I remember Al was like, what are you reading there? Because I think that I was waiting for class to start, so I'm reading this book. And he let me know that he was a real estate investor, and he owned a couple businesses like Subways and things like that. He just owned all these different businesses. And he was like, well, let me show you some things. And I remember after training, sometimes we'd go get lunch, and then he would show me some of the houses he bought, what he sold them for, or houses he bought, what he rents them for. Every now and then I would do some computer work for his Subway businesses, because sometimes the computers would have to be hooked up or something. And, again, I got a mentorship from him, and it wasn't it's not like you go up to the mentor and say, okay, you're mentoring me now. But it was one of those things where little lessons along the way were really helpful. And one of the things that, if I hadn't met him, I definitely wouldn't be in the situation I am now, because one of the things he was really big on was the way that you live is far more important than just making the money. Lifestyle should be a focus. A lot of people will sell their soul for a couple bucks, but at the end of the day, you kick the bucket. What's it worth? And so he was always big about making sure that your lifestyle comes first, not simply just, you do what you got to do sometimes. You work your face into the ground when you got to do it, but making sure that you're trying to get back to a particular lifestyle. Yeah. And even he would take these vacations by himself. He'd take a week out to Florida by himself. And that was something that I took from him, but again, there was a guy that I met in jiu-jitsu, and it kind of just got me thinking about all the different people that I've met through training, who have given me some sort of mentorship, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and that's where kind of the theme came from. But I thought that was kind of like just what would the word be? Would it be serendipitous? Like just it was kind of interesting. We're talking about mentors. I wrote an email about it, and then all of a sudden, one of my mentors that I've known since I was 18 years old randomly shows up at the gym at almost 10 o'clock.
It's like putting it out in the universe. Like you say it, like they say, if you want something to happen, or you think of something, you put it out in the univerce, and it
I 100
kind of happens to some extent,
Hey.
or there's signs of.
I'm with it. I think what you what's the word, the term, like what you think about constantly, what you obsess about is what's going to happen. And I mean, I can say from my experience, anything that I've really become like my mind became so focused on, it always seemed to pop up like in weird ways. Like sometimes like there was like I go back to my old journal, like where like I wrote stuff down, goals and things like that, and it's weird because I have goals that I wrote and I putting it out there, and then all of a sudden they're hit. Like even down to a schedule of like my day-to-day schedule looks very similar to what I wrote like 2 years ago, or like monetary goals that were set. Boom,
Do you think it's just purely random, or do you? I mean, I feel like
I
by
don't.
saying it over and over, you're believing it, and then you're actually acting upon that in some capacity. It may not be directly, but you're doing maybe things like, hey, I want to own a gym, a jiu-jitsu gym. So maybe I'm going to spend. Like, I really think about jiu-jitsu a lot. I focus on jiu-jitsu a lot. I'm at the gym more. Then opportunities kind of come up. So indirectly, I mean, maybe even directly, you are.
I'm
putting that out there.
I'm a little woo-woo about stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because like
But is it fucking woo-woo? Is it?
Well, what I mean is because some people would just say, look, it's just what you were thinking about, so you made things happen, blah blah blah. But I think there's probably we don't necessarily know how everything works.
Yeah.
We're still figuring things out. And I think there's probably far more going on sometimes than what we think. I don't know what that is, but I think there's far more as far as like when you really put out an intention out there. I think there's probably something to it more so than just simply like you're just thinking about it. It's like
Or
there's
just your actions.
there's just something to it. Like I don't know what that is, but they've been talking about this for a long time, and it's like even Al used to tell me about it. He would sit there and like meditate on the thing that he wanted to make happen, right? And those were always the things that were going to come true, as the things that he would really put out there. So, I mean, again, I think there's probably something to it. And if not, if there's nothing to it, then the idea in my head that there is, it serves me well, and I'll keep going with it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Is there anyone you feel like you've had a few mentors? Obviously, having most of your mentors were male, or all of them maybe were.
All of my mentors I would consider were male, because I think that the job of a mentor is not necessarily to like give you the exact path to follow, but they give you some sort of like archetypical model to follow and some direction to go in. To me, the way that a mentor works is it's like it's you see someone that's doing something and they can make things possible because you're like, well, you're doing it. Maybe I can do it too.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Do you think it's because like if some people maybe don't have a male influence, they'll seek out a male mentor in their lives, like more likely to do that? Are you seeking out maybe something that's lacking in your life, or something that I don't know, I'm just curious.
Well, I think, obviously my relationship with my father wasn't great. So I think I did seek out, and I still do to this day, seek out guidance from older men.
Sure.
But I also think that if you look at traditional like cultures, before we got into this modern nuclear family where just that's the way it was, like your dad, mom, and 2 kids or whatever, where you had villages, there were typically for men tribes of elders. So you would have these old men, and there would be typically a process of which the young men would be pulled away from the female, like the mother, and then they would go with these men to go through certain rituals and rites of passage that were there to sort of help the men become, or help the boys become men. And they were there to be around there, so they were around other men to model. You know what I mean? Because again, and you also got to think about it this way, like if I was looking at a woman, there's not to say that there aren't lessons learned, because I've learned plenty from the influential females in my life, right? But as far as like me being something, I can't be them, right? I just can't. But as far as like I can learn from them, but when I'm looking at how I'm going to be, who I'm going to be,
right,
what I'm going to model after, it has to be a man, because I have to see like, well, you're a guy. Like I understand that, like I relate to that, so therefore I'm going to follow.
You're similar in many ways.
Yeah, very similar. And so for me, it's like I would look at other men and I would find things that they did or whatever, and it would be like, okay, let me take a little bit of that. Just like a jiu-jitsu training, right? You take a little bit of different pieces and you bring them in to make your own stew. they would give me directions to follow, then I would make my own path in the forest, kind of thing. You know.
Is there one, like, as far as just in life, is there one mentor like was most kind of influential on you?
I feel like they all picked up at different times. You know what I mean? Like, so like my grandfather early on was like my male role model, and he was the guy that was instilling. He was like old school dude, farm boy, so he still just like hard work ethic and like a tough attitude. That's where I got that from a lot of times. And then he passed, and then there was a lot of limbo. I met Al, I met Jim around the same time, and they were giving me this. They were both these guys that had businesses that facilitated a lifestyle that they wished to live.
Right.
Jim owned a gym, and he would just lift weights and hang out. Al owned some real estate, spent a lot of times with his kids, and took naps in the middle of the day. It's like it got me to think about where when I was younger, I would have never seen these possibilities because I was a young guy coming from not the best neighborhood, and I would have never ever seen any of this. Like I wouldn't have understood that you could have had a business where you could like kind of take a nap in the middle of the day. You know what I mean? Like I didn't think that's just not something I would see, right? Because I saw my mom break her face working all the time.
Right.
And so this was kind of like, oh, okay. Cool.
You just saw some possibilities and just open your eyes to things that you never thought were even attainable.
They gave me a direction I didn't know was there.
Right.
And then from there, just different people along the way. And then there were guys in jiu-jitsu, like, that rubbed off on me, things like that. And there were guys that along the way that I learned from that were even students in the gym, that I have now that are like they're like older brothers of sorts, you know what I mean? And kind of just, they've seen a lot more stuff than I have, and they can give me a couple like, hey man, just be mindful of this. And so I think it's a really important thing. And I think that's one of the things for me, as far as jiu-jitsu goes, that I've picked up is because you're around such a wide swath of other people that you gain so much information. And for me as a young man, it was incredibly powerful because I was surrounded by people that were from walks of life I would have never been exposed to otherwise, that could then give me just little tips and little ideas and little things to think about, and then I could hang on to and kind of do something with.
What about jiu-jitsu?
Sean was a mentor.
Sean Hammonds.
Sean Hammonds, my current sort of head coach, the affiliation. That dude, like, he was a guy where I went down and trained with him because I saw that he was producing all these tough dudes, and I went down and trained with him, and I saw the way that his team was, and I saw the way the gym felt. And I saw the way that people talked about him. You know what I mean? Like it was with a lot of pride and a lot of loyalty. And it means he was doing something for them. And Sean's he's a very loyal guy to the people there with him. And so I was like, I was around. I would go down there. I mean, shit, I used to go down there almost all the time. Just like on Thursday mornings, I'd get there, train, come back up and train, teach all the stuff that I was learning down there, teach it to my guys up in Louisville. Colin, my old coach, him and Kyle both were brothers, and I learned a lot from them. Even my original coach, Mike,
and like for me, he was kind of like an influence in entrepreneurship. So he would always talk about like, why do you like do what you love doing, like be passionate about what you want to do. Don't do something because it's the way it's supposed to be. And like, me working in a certain type of physical therapy environment personally, like I've always had a dream of like, hey man, I want to train more, I want to do more jiu-jitsu specific physical therapy type stuff, and like I never thought it was possible. And then I just started kind of just listening and believing and looking at even you're a mentor to so many at the gym, but like honestly, and I didn't realize this, when I first came on, from another gym, I had about a couple years training.
Yeah.
And when I first came on, like I think you were kind of just taking over as head coach. And you were I never knew. Like I was at the gym and I was like, I trusted in you. I was like, oh, Chew's got me, and I never really had a sense of like that you weren't confident in what you were doing.
Well, I mean, it wasn't that I was completely unconfident, but there was a sense of like, I don't know what I'm doing necessarily. So I'm having to figure the shit out on the seat of my pants. Yeah. And it's just it's an opportunity that was in front of me, and I couldn't let it go.
Right.
But yeah, there was times where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is all new to me.
Right.
But I think sometimes that's the way it works, right? Like there has to be at some point. You don't want to be a bullshitter, you know what I mean? But there's going to be a point at which you're going to have to jump.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, there's people out now that are in the internet space that like, they're full of shit, and they're just out there like promoting like garbage and they're regurgitating someone else's information instead of like devoting like, time to an apprenticeship to really own their skill or their craft and then coming forward.
Yeah.
But there's also the other side where people just simply like, look, you got a good skill, feel free to share that. You know what I mean? And for me, it was like one of those situations where I was just given an opportunity. I've been training for a long time and I've been dedicating myself to this thing. And then it just fell in my lap. And it was like, well, if I don't carry the torch, who's gonna? And just, you had to run
You
with
did
it.
in a couple ways though. Like you coached, but you also competed. You led by example. I think you did things probably that you saw done, and like for you in a sense, but also like I think, I guess I'm speaking for myself. Like if I had like physical therapy students,
Right.
I would say, and I never had one before, and I was like, well, what would I want in this situation? Like, how would I guide myself? And it doesn't always work. It doesn't always relate to every individual because people learn differently and things like that.
Sure.
But that's kind of when I was like never done anything before or never coached someone in a certain setting. I would just say like, oh, well, what did I get from that, or how did I respond best? So
Yeah.
you just using your own kind of like use yourself as an example.
Yeah, for me, the all the mentors that have really like grabbed me, whether it be people I've actually met in person or people that I've seen from afar, it was always because of their example, not because of what they said. It would be one of those things where they would just. It's almost like you just watch what they do, and by that you're able to like sort of break it down, because people say a lot of stuff. But it's when you watch the way that they operate and you watch their way of being, that's to me more powerful. So if you watch a guy that goes out and competes and you see him do it, whether he wins or loses, he's out there doing it and you get to see his example. Al would tell me all sorts of different things, but more importantly was watching his way of being. Jim, the guy he had this jovial sort of life to him that you don't see from a lot of 60-year-olds, right? And he was watching his way of being and how happy he was at his age, and he wasn't broken by life. Most of the adults that I met were just broken. Like they were just miserable all the time. They're tired, whatever. He was out there 60-something years old, 66, 67 years old, lifting weights. You know what I mean? And doing, and still stronger than most people. And so a lot of times for me, like it's more important to watch the way people are being. And so for me, it's really important that I have this position, and I understood it from a pretty early point, right? When I was a head coach, because I was like, well, I know the way that I looked at my head coach, and now I'm in that position. So for me, it was like, it's not about just talking. It's about trying to be a certain way, So it's like, it's not just about like, compete. I should be willing to compete. If I want them to do something, I've got to be willing to do it. Now, there's going to be a point at some point where I can't maybe do those things. But in a healthy body, my mid-20s, I'm like, I've got to lead. I was like, I'm in this position right now. I've got to lead. I've got to go out and experience, because if I don't have experiences, what good am I? I haven't done anything. I got to go out and test myself and do what I'm supposed to do. So this way I have something to give.
Yeah.
I think that's the important thing that, people that when you get to those positions, especially for people that are wanting to teach and things like that, you need to go out and fill your cup up. Like you need to go out and collect a ton of experiences, success, victories, as well as failures and just complete like disasters. So that this way, when it comes time for you to pass down the information, to elder of your tribe, so to speak, you then have something to give them.
Right.
Because if you live this life that was like devoid of any like chances taken or taking jumps and taking leaps into something, into the unknown, then you got nothing to give. You're like, what'd you do? I did nothing. Like I have nothing to give you.
Well, even the bad experiences, like you learn from that, and okay, this is what losing, a match I should have won or whatever, like a big, losing something big, that feeling, and you're motivated by not experiencing that feeling again, and kind of, you learn from that sometimes in many, many ways, and you can almost kind of trim the fat, like show people exactly the best scenario to get the best results.
Right. Well, there was a quote, I can't remember it exactly. I just got done with a Winston Churchill biography, and I know not everyone's a fan of him, but he said something to the effect of like, there's something about a loss, something about a failure, something about a screw up that evokes a power in you that was dormant, that wasn't there before, but that sting, that pang of the loss, it conjures up something that in you that's not possible otherwise. And you can even think about your experiences. I know this is true for me. If I've lost at something, holy moly, man. Like it's like I come back with a vengeance after what it was I lost at to like correct that error. Whether it was a jiu-jitsu match where I needed to fix something, or if it was a business failure where I needed to make up for it. But it's like I come back with a vengeance because that stings, and I don't want that to be the nail in the coffin. I don't want that to be I want to change that sort of situation.
I mean, pain and loss can be a motivator. I mean, a major motivator. For me, it's some of my best jujitsu has come out of a pretty bad loss. Even not being able to train, the loss of being able to be in jujitsu because of injury. You come back and you're so much more.
You're ready to be there.
Yeah, you're just you appreciate it more. You're like, I appreciate getting my hand raised a lot more now. Like I don't take it for granted, you know. And so I don't know. There's so much power for me. I think some of my best moments in jiu-jitsu have come after a loss.
Yeah. Do you have any mentors to speak of? I mean, because again, I know that for you, you had a pretty you were very close to your father.
Yeah.
And so for me, I wasn't. So I had a ton of other mentors. But do you have any?
My dad was a very, very hard worker. You know, he would do anything for us. And
Right, when you guys are Russian immigrants.
yeah, and but he would never. He wasn't. I mean, I guess like in a way, I don't see him as a risk taker. But coming to the States
It's a risk.
at 30 something years old with your
risk.
kids are 6 and 10, not knowing the language, not having any kind. I mean, being an engineer back home, but here, you know, you can't speak. You don't. The same credentials don't apply. Like
Right.
that's a huge risk. I mean, that's like starting over at like halfway. Like most people are getting.
It's not like starting over. It's
Most
starting
people
over.
are fucking established at 30 something years old. You're established. You're already doing, for the most part, you're like, all right, I'm figuring this life thing out to an extent. Like you're starting to fuck over. Like I remember he would, I really like, I remember he would work at like this, he's a mold maker. So basically he works in this fucking warehouse where they like work with these big metal
Yeah.
metal fucking devices and they make these molds and it's like extremely cold in the wintertime. Extremely, it's like, you know, you're just in this warehouse that's so hot and it's like 105 degrees or something like.
So whatever the
during
temperature was
summertime.
outside, it was just
Yeah, it was just amplified and like, you know, he was always just, he never like shied away from like hard work. I think he's definitely a mentor for me in that aspect.
But see, and see, just like that, right? It wasn't like he was telling you, Eugene, you got to work hard, go work hard. He's out there doing it, so you realize the hard work that went into it. Like just that example, right? You were talking about this cold factory, him working and doing all this work, and you understand that as a father now, you understand what he was doing.
Yeah.
But see, that's where it's so powerful. He was an example, a model, sort of a light for the bugs to come to, not so much of a hey, work. You go work hard.
And there's different things too. Like I learned that maybe I would want to do different. You know, like in that aspect, you know, of moving to this country was a big risk, but not a lot of risks when we got here. It was kind of everything: save up money, be really conservative with things. So, you know, the fact that I was like, hey, I want to do this thing where I kind of venture out a little bit.
Talking about the business.
Yeah, it was, you know, for me like it's like, you know, you're kind of losing that comfort zone. You're losing that little bit of cushioning. You know, I'm going to come to work. I'm going to usually have work to do. I'm going to get a paycheck. Boom, boom, boom. You know, it's so in that aspect, I feel like my wife was a big supporter, maybe even a mentor because she's been on her own since she started practicing. So,
Well, I think also, you know, if you find a woman that's good for you, you know, like a wife or a girlfriend or whatever, like they have a way of being a catalyst for the things, you know, like obviously because, you know, your wife does a tremendous job doing, you know, her business as well. But again, it creates a sort of a spark in you. You know what I mean? Like I tell Jessica that she's my muse. You know what I mean? Like, cause like we'll like talk, we'll go on these long walks together, and everything that I do, I sort out with her.
yeah.
And you know, it's not as if she has some sort of knowledge that whatever is not there, but with her responses, her talking things out with me, a lot of times, like just her ability to kind of be there with me and sort of give her sort of ideas on things because they're different than mine,
Right.
gives me some really like helpful feedback on things. Like some of the videos that I've posted that have been really popular. I mean, they were the ones that she was like, "That's a good video," or "You need to change that video," and I changed it and it was popular. So it's like it's a lot of that kind of stuff, you know. Or you know, there's been times where I'm like, "I don't know. Do you think this is a good idea?" And she's just like, "No, I don't think it's a good idea," or go with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think that if you find someone that's good for you, obviously they help that sort of situation.
Well, I think that, you know, and I speak for many people, that, you know, a lot of people are interested in what you have to say on the interwebs, but us, you know, myself, I feel like you've been a tremendous mentor for me, like in many aspects, not just jiu-jitsu, you know, because I kind of had already had somewhat of an understanding of jiu-jitsu when I came to the gym. It definitely has been moved and adjusted, and you've been a
Sure.
big part of that, and huge things because you've motivated me personally to train or go compete because you do it. But even in this like realm of betting on yourself, being confident, being kind of being yourself. That's Mish and I, my wife, we've talked about like when you do videos, like you're like someone that you look up to. So I definitely think you've been a mentor, like on owning a business, on betting on yourself, on kind of being yourself, and making your own kind of path.
Sure.
So because you lead by example, and you're this is a Chewy. Good job, Chewy rant.
Good job, Chewy rant.
No,
right?
but it really like you lead by example, and there's a reason why so many of us drive 45 minutes in traffic, and we hate Dixie Highway. It's the worst. Just let me explain. Let me go on a tangent.
It wouldn't be so damn bad right now if they wouldn't stop the damn road construction.
Dude, they haven't stopped road construction
like
for
a
10 years. Literally, ever since I've gone there.
It was not that bad a couple years ago.
So Dixie Highway in Louisville, it's like 3 or 4 lanes each direction. Is the worst. There's nothing but car lots and freaking fast food. That's pretty much it. Nothing there. Terrible traffic. And there's gyms all over the place. There's gyms all over the place. And we come to Derby City because you are an internet sensation. I'm kidding.
Oh,
I'm
shut
kidding.
up.
No, we come.
You were there before I was on the internet.
We come to the gym because of the atmosphere you've built. You built an environment there. You've cultivated an environment that's just been extremely, like, kind of like we're all family. You see somebody, you smile when you see them at the gym. It's not like I'm here to do a little drilling, a little choking some people out. I'm out.
Yeah.
Like we want to stick around and just bullshit afterwards, and we talk and we want to like poke a prod it, but we do that because
and see that's the funny part. Like the ranting, like this, it started back. God, I have such a wide array of like interests that I read about and stuff like that. So like we would be in the gym. And that's where all that stuff started. It was like I would go on a rant about milk, or like about like the silliness of like something like toothpaste or something like that. Like just random rants about stuff. And then that was where like the videos came from.
Oh, it would just be fun because like we'd poke at you a little bit, and then you'd like really try to be serious about stuff. But we'd go in a direction, we'd end up going in a direction that was just like we got something fun out of the conversation.
Yeah.
But people just we'd stick around, all of us, because we all have like different backgrounds and personalities and life, outside of the gym. It was just kind of really interesting, and so that's a big thing of you lead by example and you cultivate an environment. So. That does that builds that is think back for it. So
yeah, what's up?
I was gonna ask you, like, is there any red flags? I'm always curious. We always talk about all these good things for a mentor, but have you ever like had any experiences or seen any mentors or like, I don't know if you're just for somebody just to be aware of, because everybody's always on the lookout.
Well, I don't know if it's a red flag, but it's something you got to be mindful of. So when a mentor, like a lot of times, like when you have a mentor, their opinion means a lot to you, but ultimately you have to forge your own path. And so there's been times where I went against what my mentors like that I had at certain points, what they would have thought would have been the better idea, or what they advised against me. And then, I would do it. And a lot of times it blew up in my face anyway, but I did it anyway. And it sort of worked its way out as, whatever. A lot of them understood this, they're like, I knew you were going to anyway. But, you can't let someone else again dictate your life. So even if you respect them a ton and you learned a lot from you ultimately have to make your own decision. And so you have to do that. But I don't know that to me the mentoring is not so much. I feel like the best mentoring doesn't necessarily come from like a really structured sort of relationship. It's more of like. It ends up being more of a friendship that sort of loosely sort of lends itself to that, so like, Al was never said, hey, I'm going to be your mentor. It was just this one thing where you had this older guy that knew some stuff and he's willing to share. Jim was never that kind of way. He was just here helping. Some of the guys in the gym were never that I looked to as like in different areas of my life. I looked to them for help. It was never something where they were, hey, I'm going to be a mentor. It was just like, hey, I know a little bit about this thing that maybe you don't know much about. Let me give you something to think about.
Yeah.
You know, as far as red flags, though, I don't know. Like, I
I
mean,
think
you know,
honestly, I think like if
do you have
somebody,
something in mind?
yeah, I think I do. I think a couple things is leading by example. If somebody doesn't lead by example. They don't. They tell you to do something, but they don't do it themselves. Like they
Sure.
tell you to eat well or exercise, and they don't do it
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah, yeah.
That's a red flag. And I think the other one is maybe if they want something like from you, like if they're seeking, if they're just giving you help in order to feel like they're trying to get something in return. That's the only thing. Is I think you're very giving. You don't really expect anything. Like and that's you expect like maybe like honesty, loyalty, whatever.
I mean, I'll tell you like this. I mean, to me, like it depends on the way you look at it. But, like I mean, sometimes like people come into the gym. Well, they pay a gym membership. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's like that's part of the agreement. You guys come in to use the gym, so it's like, I mean, obviously there is a monetary element to it. Now, I'm still your friend, and I'll come out and have drinks with you, whatever. I don't care. Like, it's not the only thing. It's really I care less. I care less about it than I do most things. I mean, but that's a part of it. You know what I mean? So like it is what it is. It's like it's not that I'm looking for anything in return, and I tend to think that I go far and beyond what the scope of my actual position is and what people actually pay for.
Right.
You know what I mean? But there's always those elements, and I've even seen stuff where people like say, "Hey, listen, I know like there's like guys like where like I think it's like Warren Buffett or something. Like he'll like you pay him X amount of dollars and he'll have lunch with you." And like it's like millions of dollars or something. He'll sit there and like tell you stuff. You know what I mean? And so it's like those are mentorships that you could pay for if you wanted to.
Yeah, it's a relationship of some sort. I
Yeah,
mean, it's kind of
but it's not that. It's obviously not the type of thing. But I know what you're talking about. We're talking about to me where someone begins to manipulate their position with you to get them
Yeah.
to do stuff that you maybe don't want to do.
Right.
I think that regardless of any kind of relationship that you're in, if you're doing something and the person begins to kind of hang something over your head to get you to do something you don't necessarily want to do, then that's just regardless of what kind of relationship it is. It's just a manipulative relationship
Yeah.
that's probably not in your best interest.
yeah.
Because if someone's gonna give and then come back, hey, by the way, man, remember I did that thing for you, and then hold up your head, and it's like, you don't want that because I mean that's someone that's trying to get something out of you.
Right. Yeah, and specifically in like a jiu-jitsu environment, I feel like they don't try to close off opportunities. Like I think mentors are kind of open-minded. From like you're okay with like people like we hear about cross training other gyms. Some coaches are like, no, I don't want you cross train anywhere.
We have a lot of people that come in, and we have guys that'll train elsewhere too.
Right. And
So
you've been
go.
pretty cool. Like is there yeah, I don't know. Do you any reservation? Why do you think maybe some
Insecurity.
okay.
Insecurity. It's what it is. I mean, because the thing is like I used to think about that when I was younger, right? Where I would get kind of like, about people training at other places. But then I thought about it, I was like, well, if I'm spending time worrying about that, that's energy that could have went towards just making the program better.
Yeah.
Or making things better for the people that are there. And so instead of focusing on like the things like that I don't like, it's like, okay, let's focus on something positive. Let's focus on how could I make the experience really, really good so that no matter where they go, they're going to want to come back.
Right.
You know what I mean? To me, that's what it's about. And so so I don't really care. And the thing is also people aren't my possessions. I mean, I don't own anyone. So
Right.
it's like, I wish for people to be loyal, but only in as much that it comes from a genuine place from them. It's not me demanding it. It's them saying, listen, the guy's done a lot. I feel just a genuine desire to be a part of what they're doing, right? Not so much of like, hey, I need you to be loyal. It's more of like, look, this guy's helped me out. Like I'm loyal to all kinds of people because of what they've done for me and how much
Right.
they've helped me out. And it's like I can't but help but be loyal to this person.
Yeah, it's kind of the person being mentored. You also have a responsibility to your mentor to be kind of honest and kind of, mesh well with them, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we're all over the place with this sort of this thing that we're talking about with mentorship and stuff. The thing I think that you have to be careful with going back red flags.
Yeah.
Is when people abuse their trust. I've seen that plenty of times where someone will, and this is jiu-jitsu and elsewhere, right? But like someone will be in a situation where they have a certain sort of level of authority or trust with the people, and then they'll begin to abuse that. Where they'll say like, know, I've watched firsthand where it's like someone would like, hey man, like I need you to do these things for me and whatever, and just do them because
Yeah.
hey, I'm your coach. That kind of stuff, like that stuff that's not cool, and they abuse that situation that they have. They abuse that relationship, because of the fact that they've built this trust with this person from this thing, and then they take it out of its scope and they begin to manipulate that person to get things from them.
Right.
Which is not
Well, I'm
ideal.
just, for me, like I've never been just like such a openly trusting person. I'm like, what does this person want? Like, if somebody wants something. So I guess just that's why I ask, because there's so many people that I think get into jiu-jitsu and they see a black belt or a brown belt and they're like, think this person is like, oh, this is perfect.
Right,
This
right.
person is like a god almost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
just human.
if you're somebody that's a white belt in jiu-jitsu, you have aspiration or dreams of, like, I want to do this great thing in jiu-jitsu. I want to be a world champion. You want to have the right mentors. You want to have the right, I guess, the right kind of motivation too. So
And I think it's one thing is like, for higher level belts and black belts and stuff like that, whether they wish to consider themselves that or not, they're going to end up being a mentor of sorts.
Right.
Because they're just going to rub off on the people around them. You know what I mean? And even the higher belts, when like, say if you're a brown belt and some white belt comes in and you're helping them out, that person's, they're going to cling to you a little bit to try to like help out with this stuff. And so I think it's important to try to, again, we're all human. We're all imperfect beings. We're all fallible. We make mistakes. But it's important, I think, to try to live as good a life we can. And that's something that's really important to me, because I told Jess this a long time ago. Like, we've all had maybe a hero of sorts, and then we get to meet them or we see them, and you're like let down because you see them like, oh man, like what a terrible person. You know what I mean? Like they're not who they said they were at all. And that's something for me, like, I would hate if like one of the kids in the class like saw me doing something really bad that was like, not that I do though, but I'm just saying like, if I was to do something not good, and then it was like, oh boom, destroyed. You know what I mean? So I think it's important for those people that are in those positions of authority and of trust to try to live as best they can.
Sure.
We all make mistakes, but try to be as good as they can to, again, lead by example on and off the mat. Like I was talking to my kids yesterday, like the kids class. I was like, there's two type of people. There's people that do what they're supposed to do when people are watching, and there's the people that do what they're supposed to do no matter what. And I think it's important to be that person. You do the things that you got to do. You do the work. You do the good things, whether someone's watching or not watching. If you do something nice, you don't have to do it just so you can make an Instagram post.
Right.
You can just do it because you want to do it. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be this thing. Like some of those things get kind of annoying to me, because like there's all the time where I'll just do things, just because I want to. Like sometimes if I'm in a funk, I'll go up to if I'm in the coffee shop, I'll buy whoever's coffee's behind me. Like, what do you guys want? You know what I mean? Like, all right, buy it. It makes me feel good. It has nothing to do with the other person, right? It's like I'm doing it because it makes me feel good, but I'm not going to get a post about it. Oh, you know what I did? Or like there was one time where I remember I was like driving down the road and I saw this guy trying to push his car. He broke down on him. So I was like, I put my car and put the flashers on. I got out and started helping push his car in. I'm not going to get out and post about it. You know what I mean? It's like you do the things you're supposed to do.
Selfie.
Hey guys, check out how cool I am. I'm being really nice to this guy and I'm helping him out with his car. I just want to let you guys know, and it's on the internet, because if it's not on the internet, it didn't happen.
That's right.
It's like do those things just because you get a genuine sense of like of pride out of what you're doing day to day.
Yeah, just because mentors are really important, and I think sometimes, you can have positive, negative experiences.
Sure.
It's important to have. It's important to be aware. It's important to be aware. That's all.
And you'll get a gut instinct about it too. You'll know deep down if it's wrong or right. But I think again, going back to like the old like tribal cultures, they all understood this.
Yeah.
You have to have, for men and women both, you have to have like groups of people to like help bring people up, because it's so hard. It's like it's so hard to do it from one experience. But when if you're a young man or young woman and you get to pull from a whole list of experiences from older men or women who have done all sorts of different things, you get to like pull from all those experiences and help shape you. And it's so remarkably helpful. You know what I mean? And this is even like the benefit. I read a lot of biographies. I've really gotten into this because you get to read about people's experiences and more about like how they were, not necessarily what they said. Even like I read, which is like it's like a tome. It's like 500 something pages or something. It was Emerson's biography called "Life on Fire," and basically, Emerson he was an amazing writer. Wrote all this prose and was really well known. But then when you read about him, he this guy like goes through his journals, his personal journals, and there's all this insecurity insecurity and all this like
Yeah.
nervousness and all this crazy stuff, you know, and it was one of those things where you're like, huh, you're like, man, that dude felt it. Well, maybe it's okay that I feel it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or, you know, when you read about like different people that the experience that they had and all the failure that they had, it makes it, there was so much that led up to that. And it's like, okay, you know, so like that kind of stuff's super helpful. So I really enjoy reading Campbell today.
Yeah. So
This internet was been weird. So yeah,
all right, let's do it.
Let's
Joe
do this.
Clark, what's happening?
Thank you, Joe
Thank
Clark.
you, Joe Clark. All right, guys, you have some questions. Let's do it.
We're gonna scan through the comments here in just for a second, and if you guys have some comments or questions, throw them in there. I thought I saw one from Khalil, maybe it was Khalil, yeah, Khalil Ibrahim. Feel free to throw your question out because I think you said, oh, you actually have one. Got any tips for being nervous? I'm nervous before training, boxed before, and thought, okay, in jiu-jitsu this will be better, but I don't know. It's not the pain of or being scared, but feel so ashamed when I lose. So, Khalil, so I was thinking about this. So you just now when I was reading your question, probably the most I was always nervous to train early on because it was just one of those things where, especially in the beginning, it was kind of nerve-wracking. But I remember probably the most nerve-wracking time about training was when I first came to Derby City back in 2000. So what had happened is I was a guy from a gym that was kind of a rival to the gym that Derby City was, but I left my old gym and I came there. So I was kind of from the enemy team, and I had defected, right? So I'm over there hanging out with everybody in training, and we would do these MMA sparring sessions, and these sparring sessions were tough, and we had some guys in there that were really scrappy. I remember there were some guys like there was a guy named John Schroyer that used to train there, and that dude was just, God,
He fought MMA.
He did. He was good at MMA too. He's painful to spar with.
Tough guy.
Yeah, super tough guy. And I remember like when I knew I was gonna have to spar with him, I would be like in the car, like revving myself up. Jiu-jitsu, I would train with my old one of my old coaches, Kyle Cannon, who used to beat the brakes off me. You know, and I just knew what I was in for. And so I was like, you know, and it wasn't about like, it wasn't necessarily that I was like didn't want to lose or anything. Like I didn't want to lose, but at the same time, it was just about like, I'm gonna get my butt beat today. And I know it. I know that I'm walking into a beating, but it is what it is. You got to do it. And you know, the thing is if you listen to the earlier parts of this podcast where Eugene and I were talking about insecurity and nervousness and things like that, like, you know, even though sometimes like, you know, when I was in the beginning as a coach, I wasn't the most, you know, I was still nervous. I was still insecure about the things that I was doing. But again, sometimes there has to be a bit of a cart before the horse kind of mentality. If you're training, you're going to be nervous sometimes, and it's completely okay. There's nothing to feel ashamed about. Nervousness is good. Nervousness means you're pushing yourself into an unknown boundary, and that's a good thing to have. And so what I would say is, as far as being nervous, understand that nervousness is normal. Be okay with it. And understand that all the people that you follow, all the people that you think are really cool, anyone that you think has been successful and has done something that you admire has been really nervous doing something. And understand that that's simply your path to follow. You have to go through it yourself to experience it. And that's all there is. It's like you just have to do it. There is no easy way. There's no way to get rid of the nerves. They don't go away. Basically what happens is you get better at dealing with them. And then over time, the nervousness subsides. And then as you begin to push yourself into a new boundary, you'll get nervous again. You know, hell, even when I compete to this day, I still get nervous. And I've understood that it's not a bad thing, because honestly, the nervousness is kind of interesting, because how often in your life do you feel nervous day to day? Like most of the things that we do become so mundane and boring and normal. But then you go into a situation where you're nervous and like nothing else matters in that moment other than the thing that you're doing at that moment. Like when you're getting ready for a competition, nothing else matters. You're not worried about like, you know, your bills. You're not worried about like, you know, what kind of stuff you got to do when you get home. You're not worried about anything. All you're worried about is that you're going to have another grown man or woman ready to try to rip your face off, and you've got to be ready for it. And that's kind of a cool thing, because you're completely 100% in the moment. And so just understand that pushing yourself into those those unknown boundaries of your life are good. It's going to conjure up some nervousness, and be okay with that.
That's good. I've always had, like you talked about, exposing yourself to it, and the more you expose yourself, it turns into more of a kind of a norm for you. So you don't get those same kind of really high anxiety, stress levels.
Mm-hmm. You get better. It's just like in jiu-jitsu, you know, in the beginning, like when you first start training, like you get exhausted in like 20 seconds, and then as over time you still do the same stuff, and you still get exhausted, but it takes you longer.
Yep. Visualization too for me has been something.
Gears and Games, says my coach, Warren Brooks, says, hey, tell Warren I said hello. Let's see here. From Chubbs Peterson, he says,
Oh,
when you take the seatbelt position, say right arm is over the shoulder, okay? Which hand do you cover and protect the other hand with, the other arm? So typically speaking, if I'm holding the seatbelt grip, right, so my right arm is over top of the shoulder, left arm is under, I will use my left hand to cover up my right so that this way they can't get a good grip on my choking arm. Because again, the arm that's over top of the shoulder is your choking arm. That's the one that does the damage. It's the one that seals the deal. So I want to try to keep that as covered as possible. And then this way I can begin to attack the neck, that sort of thing. So for me, that's what I do.
All right, here's one. Chewy. What do you think of giving up BJJ for 6 months or so to train judo? I like to do a bit of both, but I think it might be worth focusing on judo when I first start. Currently blue in BJJ.
Do it. Do it and see what happens. You know, I mean, again, I've never done it, but my path isn't yours. So try it out. See what happens if you stick to 6 months of judo and just see if you like it. Again, jiu-jitsu will be waiting there for you afterwards, and you're still grappling. So, I mean, try it. You know, that's one of those things where you have to just go out and see. And that's another thing. When you guys, I hope this is the way this works. I'm sure it is. But whenever someone, you know, gives you advice, don't ever just take it wholesale. Like, you listen to the advice. Like, you know, if I say something to you, like I'm saying, hey, try this out, like, or do this, it's not like written in stone. Do it, and then maybe take it in, and then figure out yourself. Try it out and see what you like. See what you think. Maybe some technique that I show doesn't work as well for you. Maybe you have to modify it, or maybe some piece of advice that I talk about in a video isn't as helpful to you. You got to then take and tailor it to your own liking and your own experience.
All right, Chewy, here's another one. Do you think it's normal for a BJJ coach to have favorite students? At my gym, it feels like there are favorites who get more awards and attention in class. I think you dealt with when you were first started training. I think Rob was kind of seen. One other guy that you trained with was seen as kind of the favorite.
It switched, yeah. So back in the day, we, you know, one of our old coaches, it would be like flavor of the week. There would be some new guy that would be kind of like exciting, and that would be the favorite for a little bit.
Yeah,
it's just newness. You know, I wouldn't say that favorites per se. I don't necessarily have favorites, but you have to understand that if there are people inside that gym that they've developed a relationship with, it's simply just natural. You're going to probably congregate with that person more. You also have to understand sometimes that like there can be other reasons for it. Like, so for instance, let's say that you're doing everything right. Your coach may not focus on you as much because you're like, look, you're doing everything perfectly. Yeah. I need to help these people out that don't know what they're doing, and they need a little bit more encouragement because they're really sucking at this stuff right now, and I don't want them to quit. So maybe I give them a little bit more love. Or maybe, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, whatever. I don't have a ton of different examples. What I would say is I don't have a ton of favorites in the gym. I just have people that I've known for a lot longer, but the way that the sort of the inner circle is, if you will, is the door's open. Like, if you want to be a part of that, all you got to do is hang out. Like, at the end of class, there's nothing that says, hey, only brown belts and purple belts get to hang out after class. It's like whoever wants to stick around and bullshit afterwards. Like, we were like last night after class, it was like, you know, we had black belts, brown belts, purple belts, blue and white belts, and we had a bunch of guys eating popsicles after we had a pretty sweaty training session last night. We were just hanging out. Like, again, you know, it's an open door policy. You just got to kind of be around. And another thing is if you're newer to the gym, it's just like a relationship. It's going to take time for people to get to know you and warm up to you, and that's just a process you can't circumvent with and you don't want to be the person that comes up and tells someone your life story the first time you meet them, right? You want it to happen organically, and so you just show up and hang out, and that's the way it is. So I don't necessarily know about favorites. That's different from person to person. I personally don't have favorites per se. I just have people that I've known longer, and so therefore I have a lot more experiences that I can chat with them about, or like, you know, inside jokes that we can reference. That kind of thing.
You connect more. Like there's more level, maybe more similarities or commonalities that you have that possibly, you know, you just outside of jiu-jitsu you connect more with. So
got one from Will Winkler says, "What is your most used consistent guard pass? What are your thoughts on wrestling techniques for passing guard?" For wrestling techniques for passing guard, I don't know what wrestling technique you would use to pass guard. Like the only like real like wrestling technique I guess that I can think of as far as passing would be like squeezing the legs and sprawling on them and trying to walk around. But as far as my most consistently used guard pass, I know it's going to sound funny, double unders. I have like, but it's not just the basic double unders. There's a lot of variations to it, but my double under pass is probably my most used pass because it works really well against guys with good guards, and I can use it to switch up to a lot of other stuff. So I use a double under variation to typically take the back, and that's probably my most consistent one.
So here's a question. And, this is from John, and John says, "I'm a smaller guy, 5'7", 165. If I want to wear a cup or not, I'm actively trying." So he's trying to figure out if he wants to wear a cup during jiu-jitsu. Try not to smash my stuff during most moves. Any advice? I'm brand new. Technique.
Man, I don't know. I don't prefer wearing cups, and you can't wear them at some tournaments.
Right.
But I just don't like them. Like they get in the way, you know. And I used to wear them for MMA fights, and then I would take them off as soon as I could. But I don't like them, and it's probably just the way that you're positioning yourself, and you just got to be mindful of that. But I would probably estimate that most grapplers don't wear cups, and so it's probably more of a situation where I mean, I don't know if it's just there's a lot of stuff going on down there, but it's probably just your technique. You're leaving some space there.
Yeah.
And I would say also if you've got like the undergarments that you're wearing, make sure they're a little bit.
I actually, when you're working for an arm bar or something, you kind of fulcrum over that area. But yeah, I think it's not legal in many of them. So like,
yeah, because they don't want you to put the cup into someone's back. Hey, Chewy, will you be bringing out a fundamental? Kobe, your computer may not be real laggy. Might be us. I think we're a little slow today. But I got a question from Bob Kenny. Says, "Will you be bringing out a fundamental DVD?" Well, first off, I don't do DVDs necessarily. I have I have like everything digital, and the reason being is because for me personally, like I don't even own a DVD player anymore. I don't have a TV, but I don't even own a DVD player. And then also I like the idea for me because I know how I am. I'm impatient. So as soon as I want something, I want it now. And so most of my stuff's all my stuff's on digital. I have some plans to give out some physical books later on, but that's to be the physical product. I already have a digital fundamentals product. Right now, it's only available after you buy something like the Half Guard series or the Wrestling for Jiu-Jitsu series. So if you buy one of those or the Get a Grip series, if you buy any of those series, you'll be asked if you would like to get the fundamental series. It'll be there as an option. So it's not by itself right now. In the future, I'm going to release it to kind of let basically people use it. Inside of it is a bunch of techniques, and then there's also a bunch of tips on everything from like there's some like corrective exercises and stretches, and there's some training tips, mindset tips, all that kind of stuff. And there's a bunch of like little like conceptual ideas for different positions, but stuff that's like really basic that would help out people from like white belts and blue belts. Basically, it's all the stuff that I wish I would have sort of gathered before purple belt. So,
nice. All right. I have a couple more. You got a couple more questions, guys? Send them our way. Rich has a question.
Rich. Simons. Rich Simon says, "I feel stupid."
So, Chewy, Rich's question.
We're having trouble with the internet today. Can you guys even hear us? Like, are you guys even still there? Because if we're there, we'll keep going. But I can't tell because it's super laggy.
I think it's still going.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It looks like it still says it's reconnecting on my side.
Well.
So we'll keep running. So guys, check this out. If you guys are listening to this and you want the actual like nicely cut up part of it,
Yep.
we'll have that up on iTunes soon. But let's go to Rich's question. So Rich Simons says, I feel way more nervous teaching once a week than I have in all the competing I've ever done, regardless of the sport. When people are trusting you to teach properly, the vulnerability is intense. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I've been to a couple of Rich's classes, and I think that that nervousness is a good thing because it keeps you sharp. You know, because again, if you don't give a crap about it, then you might get complacent. You might not care. But the fact that you actually truly care about something, someone getting something from it, I think that helps. And again, you know, you'll get more and more polished with your coaching. I think it's just a practice thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, we have some pretty big classes at the gym. So Rich will be in there teaching like, you know, 30, 40 people, and they're looking to Rich for help. Rich, if it makes you feel any better, I know a couple of the guys this past weekend used the armbar defense that you showed in the previous week. So, I mean, that was good. They actually used it and used it to get out of an armbar. So obviously some of the stuff you're teaching is helping them. But again, I think the nervousness is better than none, because if you didn't care and you were just like, it's all about Rich teaching, I think that would be a bad thing. But the fact that you do care and the fact that you want to teach and you want someone to get something from it is very important.
I think, you know, a big thing with teaching is sometimes you may question, like if you're showing something perfectly correct, you know, and you don't want to show something, you want to show anyone anything like improper. So I think like you want perfection, and you're not going to get that.
You're never going to get perfection. Perfection's never, like perfection, it's like what you strive after, but you're never going to hit, because there's like, dude, like I still learn things about really fundamental techniques, like doing like a flower sweep or something. I still learned like little new tidbits from that thing, either from other people teaching it or even from just practicing it myself. And there's like the smallest little details you'll figure out later on as you keep going. So, you know, you strive for perfection, but sometimes good is good enough. You just take what you got.
Yeah, and then when you're teaching white belts, I mean, they're not, you know, you want to get the general gist of the move, you know, the general idea, the concept, so to speak. And so sometimes the finer details aren't as, you know, as crucial, but somebody said, stop using McDonald's Wi-Fi.
Man,
sorry about that.
We've never had problems with Wi-Fi till today.
It's been one of these days. Like, I think we can learn something from this.
What can we learn?
What can we learn?
What can we learn from
patience?
I've got all the patience in the world, but I still have the product.
You know, I'm always one of those people. I'm like, always a lot more than you do. I care about like perfection and doing something perfectly and correct. And so, you know, when a podcast doesn't run perfectly, I'm like, you know, I think I need to learn to just go with the flow a little better. So
Chubbs Peterson just posted, he said it was cutting in and out. Did you say the fundamentals course is available? I saw the email with the survey. Chubbs, it's available only after like a half guard or get a grip products purchased. You'll have an option to buy it. It will be available soon as a standalone product by itself. So guys will have an option to get that. Kobe says, correction, it's called the potato internet.
Chewy, have you seen this?
What's that?
There's your thoughts on the world's madness with Atos and BJJ steroids.
Oh yeah.
Have you heard anything about this?
No, but so I looked at like I found I was, you know, just somehow like sometimes like, you know, whenever I'm like messing around on Instagram, I'll end up in these like little like wormholes, and I stumbled upon this thing called BJJ steroids, and it was like this page that if you look it up, it's nothing but like drawing like little needles on guys and like saying this guy's on steroids, this guy's on steroids. And, they seem to really attack Atos as being a bunch of roid mongers.
What are they exactly? What's their goal here?
Well, I don't think they have a goal. I think they're just like, you know, straight up either like just trolling them or whatever, you know. So
are they trying to out people, or?
I mean, but they're not really outing people because no one's getting busted for anything. They're like hating, you know. I don't know anything about it. Like, you know,
I mean, has anybody from Atos been caught using steroids? I mean, that's the thing. Like, you know,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. So
I don't know.
I mean, so I don't know what there is to get pissed off about, or what the controversy is.
See, and the problem is, and we've talked about this on the show before, I'm kind of a cynic when it comes to like drug use. Man, like You know, like I bet if you were talking about professional sports, more people than not use something or have a point. And it's not because they're awful people. It's with the situation of either you do this and you can like, live this lifestyle, do this thing that you want to do that you've been wanting to do since a kid,
Yeah.
or not. And I mean, it's real, dude. I mean, I knew a guy that was in football who he was like, he might have, he was, doing college ball and stuff. And guys are like, hey, man, what are you doing right now? You gonna do something? And, he's like, no, I'm not gonna do something. And he was like, man, he goes, those guys would just kind of blast past him. You know what I mean? But he didn't want to use anything.
Yeah.
And it's just the nature of the sport. It's unfortunate,
Yeah. I mean,
let's see, what was it? They posted up a legit picture with one of them holding a syringe, and Lucas ended up running around looking for the BJ. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, to me, it just seems like you're just, I don't know, man. Like, it is what it is.
yeah, I mean, those are people that have to look themselves in the mirror and they have to accept or deal with if they're doing that or not. And who the fuck are we to judge?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's a really comfortable spot to be an armchair person to tell you what you're doing wrong.
Right.
It's really easy to do that. And then it's a really difficult situation when you're there faced with difficult circumstances, and then you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's easy to say like it's easy for people to like be an armchair quarterback.
Right.
It's easy to look back through a history book and be like, oh yeah, why did so make this decision with this military, that he had?
Right.
It's like it's easy looking back at it, or
Right.
it's easy to point the finger when it's not you. But then when you're faced with the immense pressure of the actual true decision that can make or break you, it's not so easy.
Right.
And so again, I'm not for or against, because it's not as simple as being like this or that or whatever,
Right. And I don't know if this is defensive Atos or not defensive Atos, but let me tell you, we've had some guys from the podcast, Josh Hinger, we've talked to him before, and we've talked to Christian Woodmansee, and let me tell you, those guys fucking work so incredibly hard.
Mm-hmm.
They all work so hard and they train hard. They weight train. I mean, they live. If you're at Atos full time, you're like basic casual school. You go and we had a tough purple belt, Rob from the gym. He did a day out there, and he said it was just really everybody's phenomenal.
Well, just because you got a room full of like world champions.
Exactly.
And
And it's like, so dude, they're like, you got to think iron sharpens iron. These guys are extremely dedicated to being top level jiu-jitsu practitioners, not like your guys that work 9 to 5 and come in and train here and there. I mean, so
well, I mean, here's another thing. I mean, there's a lot. It's funny to me like how short the attention span is of certain people, because I mean, there's a lot of guys that there's several guys that have been popped for steroid use.
Right.
Like one of the Meow brothers,
Sure.
Felipe Pina, like. It is what it is, dude. Like, I mean, it's just like, and it's one of those things where those guys have been popped with it, but how many guys are actually using it? And then in fighting, happens all the time. Like some guy gets popped for something in professional sports, someone gets popped from it,
yeah,
and then people just forget about it. And they just move on to like whatever. It's like a witch hunt where people just get riled up for a little bit and they forget about it. And so it's just like, I don't know. It's not like a. My thing is like people get all like angry about someone using the steroids, but then it's like they forget about it 2 months later, and then the person competes again, and they just don't even think anything of it. And they're like, "Oh, the guy did a great job." It's like I feel like it's just something that people they get fired up about for a short time, and it's not like some real moral qualm that they have. They're just like,
Well, maybe it's something with cheating or not playing by the rules.
Now, here's the question: is it cheating if they don't test for anything and they don't say anything about it? Is it still cheating?
No.
I mean, because like, what if like because like in like Pride, for instance,
right?
All the old Pride fighters, they were like, "Man, we want you to use this stuff." Like that's what all those guys said. They were like it was like in their contract encouraging you to like maybe use a little something. Were those guys cheaters? If you have some guy, let's say about this, if you have like some older guy who's maybe in his like 30s or 40s and he does like TRT from a doctor, and that doctor gives him a dosage that's considered like medically like whatever, is that cheating? It's like this is where the water becomes murky. Or let's say that you have two competitors. One comes from a wealthy family and he has all the money for supplements and he lives a really relaxed lifestyle. The other guy has to work 40 hours a week to fund his training and his apartment and everything else, and he trains and is living off ramen noodles. Does that guy have an unfair advantage? It's like it's all about what we ascribe to the meaning of these rules, because we make the rules up. These rules are not bestowed bestowed upon us from like the universe and reality, right? It's not like there's a physical law that this is cheating. It's a rule that we give to it. You know what I mean? And in some places, it's considered a cheating. In other places, like Japan, like, oh, we don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I think it's important to think that, because it's like people, they approach this as if like, it's like we're working with imaginary stuff here. You know, like it's rules we make up. You know, like we make them up as people, and at different times, it's no different than like you look at like marijuana. Somehow it became illegal, right? And then we decide that it was illegal, and now it's starting to become legal. Or mushrooms were legal, now they're becoming legal. You know, it's like these are things that we just say it is. You know, whether it is, and it depends on our perception.
Yeah, well, and things affect people different. Like for example, marijuana. Like some people train better. Some people are slower. The reaction times can be worse. Some people feel more sharp. It just depends on the individual. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think steroids is tricky.
It is.
It's tricky.
It's a tough situation.
If you're not testing, then people are like, I just want to be a natural athlete or whatever. But then if you are, it can, I guess, in a way, level the playing field. But then there's other stuff. There's workarounds. Like you said, there's people that are able to diet better or get more rest or just exclusively train or do something.
Right.
So
and the reality is that no matter how much steroid you take, like they're not gonna like change who you are. Like for instance, what I mean is like if you're not good at jiu-jitsu, taking all the steroids is not going to change that. If you don't eat right, if you don't train hard, you're not like it's not, you're not going to eat much from it. Now, if you have a guy who's like a stud athlete who dedicates his life to something and then he starts using it, well, then maybe it takes him up a notch.
Yeah.
If you're like it's in like football, right? So if you're a crappy high school player, taking much steroids might make you an okay football player, right? In high school.
Yeah.
If you're like a college stud, then maybe if you do them, maybe they take you up to a professional level. Maybe they don't. I don't know. Things go on. They keep testing these things from way back, these blood samples and things they have, and they keep finding more and more people are using them.
Yeah.
Like there was that one that they did from like the Russian team or something, right? Like recently, where it's like the whole Russian squad. Or
they were all like the Sochi
Eastern
Olympics.
Bloc. Yeah.
Every single one of them got popped for like some type of
crazy.
steroid. Even like the tennis players and like just everybody. But
and then the bicycling, like from Icarus, remember like talking like that? Like,
oh yeah, man!
All the cycles were used.
Well, that was EPO, I think.
Right, and performance enhancing drugs. Right.
That thing is that, yeah. But that guy said he said he took the steroid regimen that Lance Armstrong had taken, and it didn't change his times at all, which I don't know why that is, but it never changed his performance. So, but.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, man. Like,
I don't know. Like, I think definitely steroids has a bigger impact in MMA.
Sure, because of the physical punching
and like trauma. The ability to. Because I think, and I don't know if this is true, but I think some of these guys are better able to take a shot. I think they're like do you feel like? I wonder if that's the case. Like when. I guess Vitor had, but he didn't really get hit much when he was TRT Vitor.
I mean, I'm sure it probably helps in some degree just from the aggression, things like that. I mean, there's obviously some benefits. Your aggression is going to go up.
Sure.
The muscularity goes up, and obviously muscle has the ability to protect. Even like having a stronger neck to help prevent, things like that and head trauma. So, I mean, absolutely. I mean, so it is what it is. So
yeah. All right.
Let's see here. We'll take like a couple more questions and we'll wrap up, guys.
Well,
what's up?
Let me see. What about that? So
which one?
Khalil.
Does
CBD help you with recovery?
Let's see here. Guam Tech. When Chewy talks fast, it means he's into the subject. That's true. I get all excited.
Get into it.
Plus, I just had a cup of coffee, so I'm all like hyper. Khalil, I'm not gears, but I'll tell you this. CBD definitely helps me with recovery. I encourage people all the time, like, just try it. Like, that's one of the reasons why, like, I'm really finicky about like doing any sponsors, as Eugene knows, because we've had people ask to be sponsorship. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. But we do have a sponsor in the show, which is Charlotte's Web. And for the simple reason that it's going to be something I actually use. And so I use that stuff every night. It helps me out with my sleep.
Yeah.
I feel like it's where I've actually noticed it is like muscle soreness. Like my I swear, my neck, I have a trap, my upper right trap tends to get angry at me. And like when it does, I just up the dose a little bit and it seems to go away pretty quickly.
I feel better. I had a pretty hard training session. I hadn't had a hard training session like that in a while, probably a couple months, maybe a month. I don't even know. But I definitely don't feel as bad today. So I take it in the morning. Like, and everybody's different. Like some people feel more kind of less stressed, I
Yeah.
guess. Some people feel like a little more chilled out. But definitely there's some good, helps with recovery and some soreness. So that's definitely a big thing for jiu-jitsu. If you're training at a high level, and again, it's not going to be the only thing. Like you better eat right. You better, do your recovery work, stretching, whatever that is, get rest and sleep. But it's definitely another piece of the puzzle. So
Let's see here. Jay Esco, do private sessions work best with your main instructor or with another instructor who has won more competitions? Jay, I don't think either one of those things matters. I don't think a competition is necessarily a good litmus test as far as if that person's a good coach or not. What I would say is find the guy that maybe has the best style for you or someone that you kind of enjoy learning from and just do the lessons with them. I wouldn't say that, I don't really think competitions necessarily have to come into play. That's my thought.
I mean, it's also like learning style or teaching style.
Yeah, who do you learn from better?
Yeah.
Like has little to do with their, because I've met plenty of guys who are fantastic competitors and they were subpar teachers.
Yeah.
Because they just don't care. I'm a competitor.
They're just not good at breaking shit down. They don't know how to teach. They don't. That's a skill too.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a skill. Being able to break things down in a simple manner. Man, I went to one class. This is years ago, and I remember like listening to the guy talk, and he was teaching a move, and I felt like the guy was just trying to use to explain something very simple. You know what I mean? Like I remember it was there was one point where he was like basically saying push the legs to the left, right?
Yep.
So he said promote the legs to the left. I remember like shaking my head, like promote the legs to the left. Like, why are we trying to overcomplicate this? Push the legs to the left. We can keep this simple. Like I think it was Einstein, right? He said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't really know it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So something to that effect. Why do you have to say weird words to explain simple ideas? I'm going to promote the legs to the left. No, just push them.
I think being a medical, somebody in the medical field that primarily you learn and you research or you learn about things, it's almost a skill to break it down in a way that's digestible to the everyday person. Like because
that's a skill.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to cater to your audience. It's like if you have no medical background at all and you don't know anything about certain medical terminology, like truly knowing something is being able to describe it in a way that's understandable to you. And that's the same thing with teaching. Maybe it's a complicated skill, but you break it down into parts and then digestible pieces.
And I mean, it's even like even like with doctors. I remember when my mother had cancer. I remember like there was one doctor that he would talk in all this like jargon about the things that were going on, and my mom I couldn't understand them.
Yeah.
And I remember there was one time, man, I went outside and I was talking to the doctor and I was really angry at him, and like I was probably raising my voice because a couple of the nurses were kind of looking uneasy, and he kind of waved them off, and he apologized. You know what I mean? And I was like, because he's like, she's out of it. You're talking these big words. I don't even understand what you're talking about, and I'm like coherent. And then there was another doctor who, this is no judge on either one of their skills as physicians, right?
Right.
One of the doctors came in and broke down, this thing's going on, like he would break it down as to what it actually meant.
Just having a good bedside manner. I mean, that's a big
yeah,
thing.
but it's something that a lot of times goes, they don't really focus on.
Right.
Sometimes.
Or they don't care. Ambulance.
So listen, guys, the word lexicon, if you want to know what that means, the word lexicon, because I'm looking in the channel right now, and a bunch of you guys are like, what the hell is a lexicon? Lexicon, I'll use the definition of it, means the vocabulary of a person, language, or branch of knowledge. So basically, a lexicon is all the available words that person has at their disposal. And basically, what I'm talking about when you're talking about flexing your lexicon, it's like, look at my big words.
Look how smart I am.
Look how smart I am. I got big words. I'm not going to push the legs to the left. I'm going to promote them to the left. Stop it. Just stop it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, like it's like if you were trying to tell someone like like about like certain types of muscle groups, like look at like let's talk about like hey, this one right here, this is going to put a lot of strain. It's like doing this, like, hey guys, so I'm going to show you guys how to do a slicer, and this slicer is really going to work on attacking the gastroc and the ilius, isn't it?
Where?
The calf. It's like
No,
gastroc.
gastroc soleus.
Gastroc and the soleus, right?
Yes.
And it's going to attack the soleus and the gastroc. Like just stop it and call it a calf muscle. Stop it. You don't have to do that. It's like that kind of stuff where people just unnecessarily use it because I think that there's a desire to sound cool or smart. When in reality, if you can explain something in simple terms, that's going to connect to the average person far better than you trying to be like, ugh. Look at the big words.
How do you think? So John Danaher he's extremely intelligent.
Because here's what John Danaher does. John Danaher he does a really good job of. It reminds me of a little bit of Kelly Starrett.
Yeah.
Where Kelly Starrett will say the name of the muscle, but then he'll say what it really does or what it means. Right. So John Danaher, if you've watched any of his instructionals, he'll talk. And obviously, he has a very deep understanding of what he means by these words. He's not just trying to flex a word. That's just how he thinks.
Right.
So he breaks it down and says, it's this, and what that means is this. He'll say his complex sort of terminology, and then he'll break it down as to what it means in simple terms, and so that then it becomes easy to digest. But it's like I feel like when you watch a John Danaher like instructional, you're like getting like a lecture. You're getting like a jiu-jitsu like lecture where you go deep into something.
I love his shit. Like he says things in a way, and then like he goes really in depth and breaks it down to a point where
I can only take it in doses.
You understand? I don't know. I love it. Like for me, like understanding the human anatomy and the body, and like how he like talks about levers and things like that, and having this position versus it just makes total sense. Because I think mechanically, I think the human body is like levers, pulleys, a mechanism.
Sure.
And so for me, it makes sense.
No, there's some really good stuff. For what I mean is when I take it in doses, like for instance,
A lot of info.
it's a lot of info, and then to me, it's like okay, knowing all this stuff means jack squat because you could know like how these levers work. But for me, it's like, okay, well, how am I going to create it? Like, for instance, like one of the guys gave me, let me watch because he got it. Let me watch the back mount instructional.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was like, okay, watching it, and then I'm like, okay, like this, I'm watching a lecture here. I'm watching some sort of like dissertation on jiu-jitsu, in the back mount. So as he's going through it, I would stop it and be like, okay, well, how do I develop a drill? Or like a drill that I can like, because again, knowing something and then having it in your nervous system are two different things. And so it's like, okay, if there's a really good technique that he showed there, how do I wire that into the nervous system of the students? How do I get that into my own nervous system? What kind of drill could I create? Or even like, okay, here is what he mean. Like, here's this thing that he's talking about. What are the implications of that? Where does that come into techniques? Like what does the fact that the head needs to be in this position of the body in relation to the choking arm? How can that be taught to people so that they understand it? Or where would that come into play with my own game and my own system of jiu-jitsu? And so for me, it's like I have to stop and I have to basically digest it and bring it into the fold before I can move on.
Right.
And because it was so dense. You know what I mean? It really is. He has a very dense knowledge.
Right.
And so for me, it's like it was really interesting to see that stuff.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to think about. Like he uses so much terminology, but he goes so in depth that he spends a lot of time on one aspect of a move, which it gives you plenty of time to digest the material, so to speak. So I love his stuff, but then sometimes you just want to see the move and like break it down on your own.
Yeah.
And
For me, I know like for me, I'm more abstract, and I need to like knowing it, like seeing it just doesn't do it for me. It's like I gotta feel it.
Right.
So for me, I'm very much like I like to like dig into like either instructionals or I'll dig into like matches, and I'll pull something out, and I'm like, okay, I got this technique that I want to work on now. And then when I get into the technique, I then begin to sort of feel the mechanics of it, and then I get to understand. Well, if they can't turn the shoulder, this sort of thing. Like it becomes more apparent to me. And then if I was to go back and watch something like, for instance, like when I was watching that back DVD, a lot of the stuff I already inherently knew.
Yeah.
He explained it. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense because that's why we always do it this way, and like, but he explained it because he got so deep into it that then I was like, okay, but it's like, I don't think if I'm just saying this from personal experience, if I was like watching it and I hadn't had such a deep knowledge already, I don't know that it would have made as much sense.
Right.
Because it's like, because again, it's like we're talking about wiring into the body versus just seeing it. And I think it made sense because I'd already spent a lot of time on the back, and then it's like I get to watch this, and then he's diving into these positions. It was like this nice compliment.
Yeah.
But everybody's a little different. I'm not
Right.
I'm not a very like mechanically sort of A B C D engineering type mindset. I'm kind of like I'm more of like the abstract, like was it right brain thinker, like where I'm like just I want to get out there and play around. I want to go.
Right.
I want to just try stuff out before I ever like get into like how it works.
Well, you've always talked about like when you got a video game when you were younger, you just like throw the instructions away and just start hacking them, at the remote and just figuring it out.
Yeah, I would just like there was yeah, exactly. I would just get the video game and I would throw the instruction manual to the side. I'm like, I'm just gonna figure this stuff out.
Yeah. All right. Let's get one more question in.
One more question. I'll let you pick this one.
All right.
In a world where Eugene picks another question.
I don't know if I have one. Day.
Here's one.
Okay, go ahead.
John Fustino says, I have
All
a
right.
mental block that's like, quote, don't hurt him, which is my downfall when I roll. I don't have the technique down yet, so I'm just flailing around like a rag doll, and I don't resist enough. So, John, I think that you're saying that you're rolling, and you have this hang up of not wanting to hurt someone, so therefore, you don't really go after their submissions or whatever it might be. And in that situation, I get it. But at the same time, it's like, first off, jiu-jitsu is not a soft sport. What is it? The soft way. It's like a joke. It's a joke. It's a rough sport.
The gentle art.
The gentle art. It's a rough sport, man. It's a very rough sport because of what we're doing, especially the rolling part of it. To me, you can go hard. Like last night is a great example. Like so, last night, like I was basically there to push everybody, and I'm in there like going after everybody. And I was just going after it. But, at the end range of submissions and things like that, ultra slow. But when we're talking about guard passing, we're talking about like putting pressure on people. I'm going after it. I'm not pulling any punches. But at the in range of submissions, I slow down. And so I think that as long as, the biggest place that you're going to, John, he's less than in a week. Okay, so this makes more sense. So you've only been training for a week. So here's what it is, man. I'll tell you exactly what it is. We live in a society today where we don't really get to exercise that sort of side of ourselves, right? Because you're taught that aggression's bad. You shouldn't be aggressive, right? Like when you're, you just don't get an outlet for it. If you're outside day to day, when do you get to be aggressive? Like you can't get out and be physically aggressive with someone. You just can't. And so a lot of times it's an untapped sort of side of people that they don't actually get chance to tap into. I see this with men and women both. And then it's like, as they get into it, they learn that there's this side of them that they didn't know existed. That's like kind of fun to bring out a little bit. And it gives you this really nice release where, to me, it's like, there's a reason why people like road rage and stuff happens. It's because people are trying to pin up this emotion and they try to act like it doesn't exist. Like I think there was a joke the other day. I don't know if it was true or not, but it was like, some guy, like some like city mayor or something or whatever, was like trying to like legalize like public boxing. Like
Yeah, I saw that.
I was like, what a fantastic idea. Like what a great idea where you say, listen, I don't like you right now. You're irritating me. We've been going at it. We've been barking at each other. Let's go have a little bit of a fist fight for a round or two under medically supervised circumstances and then be done with it. Like it would be better for everybody. Like, because to me, like, again, like you see this happen. Like I remember when I was younger, it was completely normal in schools to fight. Every now and then, like people would just get into fights. It was kind of okay. It's just what happens sometimes. After you fought, you were done with it. You just didn't care anymore. Whatever. You know what I mean? But then you're in a situation now where it's like it doesn't matter. Even if you're defending yourself half the time, you get in trouble. Like some kid can pick on you. Then if you stand up for yourself, ooh, you're in trouble now too. It's like, and then the kids can't do anything. They're pent up, and then they wonder why people are going crazy because there's these people are not meant to be sit in a cubicle. They're not meant to sit in these mechanical cars and just do nothing. If we were in our pre-modern state, if someone, hell, not even modern state, let's just go back 100, like 50 years ago. Let's 50 years ago. If someone said something to you, you might get into a fight with them, and it was completely okay. You exchange a couple fists, and that's that.
Yeah.
Right? That was normal. But we've gotten to this softened state where we don't ever get to do that anymore. It's considered such a bad thing. And so a lot of times people, I think that's one of the cool things about jiu-jitsu is you get to tap into this side, this aggressive side, and you get to give it a healthy outlet that you don't have otherwise. And this is why so many people come into jiu-jitsu and they do this, or even boxing or sambo or judo or wrestling. They come in and this side of them is tapped into and they leave practices feeling absolutely amazing. Hell, even like the women in our gym that like don't want anything to do with actually like full on sparring, but they get in, they hit that bag, and they're like digging into it. Oh, do they love it? They leave to the gym feeling great. And it's because there's a side of you that's there, whether you want to choose to admit it or not, it's there. And I think it's one of those things where it's worth honoring that side of yourself. And so going back to the original question, you don't want to hurt people. That's okay. Understand that over time you'll get used to it. You'll find the boundaries of where you're at, right? You'll find kind of where too far is too far, and you'll find out kind of where you go. It's a natural thing that happens to a lot of people who haven't been in these situations, but don't worry about it. If you keep showing up, what's going to happen is you're going to find the rules. You're going to kind of get a feel for how hard you can go without being a butthole, and how far you can go without being like unsafe or how being safe. And you'll find the boundaries that you can play within, and it'll be fine.
It's kind of like a controlled aggression almost. You have that aggression, but you don't want to turn it on and turn it off. And so as a white belt, you feel like you have to just really, really go hard the whole time. And that's why white belts a lot of times get tired or fatigued really quickly. They don't have the muscle memory and things like that. But that's the main thing. Like for you, we rolled yesterday, and man, you beat the shit out of me. But never was I in any kind of physical unsafe danger. I mean, obviously I was getting submitted, but we've been training for a long time. I've also been doing it for a long time that we know, like, hey, I'm in a bad spot. I'm going to tap. And you also know I've got you. Yeah. I expect a certain response. So, but as a white belt, like you just feel like you have to use everything that you have.
And you kind of do
all the time. And then it's just, there's a higher risk of, because go-karting. Okay. But if you're on a go-kart track, you know that you have to kind of let off the gas a little bit and start accelerating when you're in a certain aspect of a turn. I'd say and people aren't running their cars at, with the pedal down all the way. They're kind of controlling, they're smooth. And that's how it is with jiu-jitsu. You get in a certain position, you're smooth with it, you have a controlled position, then you explode when you need to. So I think that's just it just comes with time.
Yeah, to me, it's just like anything else. You find your boundaries, right? Like if you're in a relationship with a person, whether it be a friendship, whether it be a romantic relationship, whatever, you find the boundaries, right? Like with your friends, you know what you can talk about. Yeah. You know what you can't talk about. You know that I might know that something might upset you, so I don't bring it up. Right. If I have a romantic relationship, right, there might be certain boundaries that are set in our relationship. And with your training partners, man, and you're going to find these boundaries where you understand what is too hard and what's not hard enough. And when you can go hard and when you can back off the gas pedal. Like last night, like I said, we were training really hard. And hell, even on Monday morning, I was doing some comp training with the guys, and I remember I had 2 of my white belts. And basically, I was like, all right, so because we had odd numbers, I was like, I'm going to train with both you guys. I'm going to submit you, and then I'm going to roll with that one, and then I'll submit you, then I'm going to roll with the other one. Where I'm just going to go back and forth between you guys because I'm trying to push them. And so I was just submitting them left and right. Now, I was going hard, but I was very conscious of their safety and making sure that at the end range of those submissions, very slow, and make sure they had time to tap. But this way, when we're going hard, we still have the ability to be safe. But again, that's taken some time. I think that as long as you're going into it, and you're always being mindful of that person, you'll be fine. And one thing that you can do is always be willing to check on your partner. Like sometimes if I'm in the middle of something, if I feel something kind of weird, or maybe I hit them, like sometimes you end up banging like knees together or something, I'll stop for a second and I'll be like, hey bro, you okay? And if they say, yeah, cool, or if they're not, we'll back off, or even if I have a submission, there's a time where I have a guy that used to train with us named Nate. And Nate was super gritty. And he didn't want to tap his stuff. He's stubborn, freaking stubborn guy, stubborn old Texan. Yep. And I would put him in an arm bar, and he'd be like trying to fight out of it. I'm like, you good? He's like, I'm still going. And I would like slowly extend it. But I would chat with him like while we're in that in range again, making sure that I'm not taking it too far, And so you can do the same with your training partners. Communication is important.
Like a really insane environment.
That's part of it, man. Last one, just because it popped up. This is one from Jessica. He says coming to NYC in 2019 or 20. I might be in there maybe sometime next year or something. I don't know. I don't have plans of right now. Although I'm probably going to do Nogi Pans again. And if I do Nogi Pans again, I'll probably make a trip with Jess this time because I don't think she's been to New York. Nice. So I'll bring her up to New York for a couple days and we'll probably hang out there. So
well, the New York Open too. When is that?
I don't know. Yeah,
that's usually a pretty big tournament.
Yeah. So. We'll see. I might be up there. As far as like seminars and stuff, not as of right now, I don't know. But so we'll see.
Awesome.
guys, I think we're finished. First off, I want to say thank you guys for hanging around today because
Yes.
the internet was clunky. We got started a little bit late. But I'm glad you stuck around and had a good time with us, guys. And appreciate your questions. Appreciate your support. And that's it for me. So thank you guys so much for joining us today.
See you later.